Please note, this episode discusses crimes against children. While not explicit, listener discretion is advised. Benjamin Wolfe is a talented director of photography with years of experience behind the camera, capturing some of the most pressing crime cases in the country. Known for his keen eye and artistic vision, Benjamin has spent countless hours filming in haunting locations, delving deep into the shadows to uncover the truth. His work goes beyond mere visuals. He finds inspiration and intention in every frame, ensuring that the stories he tells resonate with authenticity and respect. With a unique blend of creativity and compassion, Benjamin brings a powerful perspective to the world of true crime storytelling. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Benjamin's personal tale. Well, I am sitting down today with someone that I've known for a couple years now. This is actually my DP from In Pursuit with John Walsh on season 4 that I did with the team, and I am so excited to have you. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hey, Celene Beth, I'm great. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Good. So first things first, when did you know you wanted to be a cinematographer?
Good question. I think kind of in my early 20s is when it really kicked in. I was always interested in storytelling and from an early age got like even in high school got little internships and opportunities to mess around in radio and TV and yeah. In high school, I took an internship at a local radio station. I was just like, "How does all this work? What's this all about?" And went to college to study what ended up being communications. Got some chance to try different roles during that process, but ultimately found it unsatisfying. And got out of school and realized that I wanted to do documentary and I wanted to do long form documentary. So I hired at a small PBS station in West Virginia and worked my way up through several different positions and found that camera and lighting were what really stuck with me. So I got to do some producing and I got to do some sound and I got to do some editing and all that was really great. I felt like it was my grad school. Once I decided to leave West Virginia, find a bigger market and work as a career freelancer, I used my camera department skills to move forward. And so I did assistant camera work for a little while, all the time studying everybody around me, and then did some gaffing and some grip work that got me in with comfortable with all the lights and how to solve problems because I feel like that's what the DP job is, right? It's just creative
Yeah.
problem solving. So it's like if you come up the assistant camera route, you kind of solve problems through the lens, and if you come up the gaffing route, you which often seem like the two paths that lead to director of photography stuff. You sort of solve problems with lighting. So I felt like if I could get time in each of those departments, it would improve me being able to just solve problems and tell stories visually.
That's awesome. I love that answer. So how did you initially get the start in this industry, but then also in the true crime world?
Yeah, it's I feel old now, right? Within the industry, it's a young person's game.
Yeah.
So when I started, there weren't as many outlets for this
Mhm.
kind of work. I see people now finding it, at least it seems to me, easier to get on a set because there's just stuff happening. There's so many ways for stuff to get created, product to get created. And so I sent out a million cold calls and resume letters the way you kind of did it in the late 80s and early 90s and got a lot of rejection and got a lot of thanks, we'll keep this on file stuff, and kept taking internships. So I did every summer of college, I took an internship and was willing to follow that model of working for free to try to get your foot in the door. And a lot of the internships taught me what I didn't want to do, which was also really valuable. It wasn't like, oh, I got that internship and they hired me later. It was a really great fit. It was like, I did that internship and I don't want to go back there to see if they're hiring. Um,
Yeah.
so that was good. One of those internships, though, ended up being in Washington, D.C. at National Public Radio with All Things Considered. And All Things Considered was felt like to me at the time radio documentary. I mean, it's news
Yeah.
magazine, maybe I would say now, but at
Yeah.
the time it felt like they were doing documentary, and that really appealed to me. It was sort of always in my interest, and it became a bigger interest after that. And then it was moving into public television that they gave me my start in a long format historical documentary. So I don't know. Did I
Wow.
answer the question? I'm not sure I did
Yeah,
exactly.
you answered.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what was the first true crime project you worked on? Do you remember that?
There, it felt like true crime came into New York in maybe the early to mid 2000s, I would say. It
Hmm.
was kind of maybe 2015. I started to really become aware of this. Discovery ID seemed to be doing a lot of it, but
Right.
everybody was kind of Lifetime was doing some. It felt like E had some true crime they were doing.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, this stuff's selling. And it's also what I learned was really marketable overseas. Like they're
Hmm.
getting these deals in Eastern Europe. People love true crime. I don't know if I remember the exact first episode, but I remember that things felt like they were themed. Like I was doing shows called Do Not Disturb, and it was about murders in
Mm.
high-end hotels, or I was doing Elder Skelter, and it was about crimes committed by senior citizens. And so they were just
Wow.
trying to not have a broad, like, let's just, I don't know, what was the one that ran forever, Wives with Knives, or something
Oh
like that,
yeah.
that everybody had a genre, like a little theme they wanted their show, and
Hmm.
not just have crime. We got a little calloused in the biz, and we were calling it like, true crime porn, because you were sort of
Yeah.
just titillating the audience and
Yeah.
putting people through these really difficult interviews for the sake of entertainment. There
Yeah.
wasn't a bigger purpose. It was the unscripted world that I was mostly working in was their chance to kind of play Hollywood a little bit. It was sort of
Yeah.
like we would get a makeup department, and we would have a wardrobe, and we would have a lighting team and stuff we didn't normally get, but for doing these recreations of these crimes. And
Hmm.
there was a moment where the team and I often didn't get to do it because they felt that it was a maybe entry level position to do the
Mm.
interviews. They would
Hmm.
just set up in a conference room and they would cycle people through, do the law enforcement and the victims families, whoever they were in these. I would sort of design the interview look, and then
Right.
they would send like the assistant camera or a B camera person to just do those, and they would keep me to do the recreation stuff, which they thought was a little more skilled, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to say why, but I missed a lot of the foundation of the story. So I would get it as a script on set for the
Yeah.
recreations. So I feel like those interviews, putting people through those interviews just so that we could pretend to make movies was really hard on them. I think probably not
Yeah.
fair in the long run.
Yeah. That's actually some really thought-provoking insight as to what has happened in years prior, like before. Well, let's take In Pursuit with John Walsh or, America's Most Wanted. There is a mission on that series. So by you saying, true crime porn, that's really kind of what it was in those earlier years. So how did you know that that was a job for you, especially knowing that, your time in true crime would eventually evolve? So how did that like resonate with you?
Yeah. Well, part of it was I have always enjoyed shooting what I call high contrast, working in the dark, working with light and dark. And so it was appealing to me visually that a lot of this stuff happened at night or happened, you could
Yeah.
make it moody and that would help tell the story. It didn't have to be, I don't know. I used to joke that there's shows I do where I walk in the house and I turn all the lights on, and there's shows I do where I walk in the house and I turn all the lights off. This was one of those shows where you turn all the lights off. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I would even go in police stations. I'd be like, what's it look like with the lights off? So we'll just motivate this by the windows. And the cops are like, no, it's like we live with these blaring fluorescent lights and our
Yeah.
whole life. We don't do that. For me, part of it was visual, and then part of it was storytelling. They're strong stories, a lot of these crime
Yeah.
stories. I mean,
Yeah.
they are things that make you scratch your head and you're like, I didn't know people were that depraved, or that's a really brutal experience. And yet, once In Pursuit came around, you're right, the purpose of it made all that seem worthwhile. Like, we're going to
Yeah.
subject these people to retelling this stuff, and we're going to sit through listening to this stuff for the purpose of trying to catch these people.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody high fives every time we get a capture. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really meaningful. So everyone is on board, and you understand
Mm-hmm.
why we need to
Mm-hmm.
tell these stories.
Yeah.
And the days, as you remember, were just like the law enforcement days are not so emotional.
Yes.
They're factual and
Mm-hmm.
they're necessary to hear what the status of the investigation. But the days with the families are,
The hard
I mean,
days.
just, yeah, completely
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that series, over the many seasons that I was on it, sort of drifted more into child sex stuff. And
Yeah.
that stuff is just incredibly hard to listen to. I mean,
Yeah.
the courage that people would have to come and share that with us was remarkable and would always be inspiring to me, that they could tell these. Sometimes they would want to be obscured. It wasn't always like wanting their full face shown.
Yeah.
But as Callahan's role got larger and John sort of stepped back and stayed more in the studio, and Callahan's job at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children felt like more of it played to his wheelhouse, that we started recruiting cases or casting
Mm-hmm.
cases, as the case may be, that fit what he was comfortable with. And that place does incredible work, but
Yeah.
they're surrounded by just incredibly brutal stories day in and
Mm-hmm.
day out.
Exactly. Yeah. And you are also talking about something that's so real when it comes to filming these series. So, since you were on In Pursuit for so many seasons, is there a particular case or episode or story that has stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, there were a couple. One was the very first one, which we did in Texas. I guess both of the ones I'm thinking of are in Texas. That
Mm-hmm.
was a Michigan one too. There's a couple
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, stuck with me. The first Texas one was about a church.
Mm.
I don't think he was a pastor. I think he was just worked at the church. A guy who molested, hundreds
Yeah.
of kids that were connected to that church, and had the story that we told that day was the one of those kids as an adult now, just the impact it had on his life, and his parents watching him
Mm-hmm.
deteriorate as he struggled with how to share what had happened, not being able to tell anybody and suffering with it. The courage that he had to
Yeah.
finally share that with us. And one of the pieces of that was that the family trusted the abuser so much that because he was with the church, that they
Mm-hmm.
let him move into an apartment above their garage. And so then he and their son were in close proximity, and the abuse was continued
Mm-hmm.
far beyond just having been touched at church. Um,
Yeah.
so that was tough, but we caught that guy in Mexico.
Amazing.
Really fantastic.
Yeah.
And then another story in Michigan. I mean, yeah, was that this couple had broken up, and the father took the kids and turned the older daughter, who was a teenager, maybe 12, maybe 13, coming into 13, into his wife. Then she became his wife.
Mm.
So they shared a
Yeah.
bed. She cooked for the kids. She took the younger children, and
Jeez.
you couldn't believe that that was acceptable, but somehow she got groomed into thinking that that was a relationship that was okay. And
Yeah.
that only got discovered because she, as going through middle school or maybe early high school, had a Halloween party, a sleepover. Some girls came over and they were playing Truth or Dare, and the dad came in from another room and made some uncomfortable suggestions to
Mm-hmm.
people, like maybe you could suck my toe or something, to these other girls.
Ugh.
And they went and told their parents, and their parents were like, this is unacceptable, this is inappropriate. And the cops went over and talked to them, and that cracked the whole house of cards of what
Wow.
he and his daughter were doing. And you're just like, this is, I mean, he ran and abandoned his car, I think, in the Arizona Mexico border. And I don't know if they found him dead or if we caught him.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how that resolved, but that was
Yeah.
one that stuck with me, that I was just like, how does something within a family get so twisted?
Right.
And then the last one was just somewhere, maybe Corpus, somewhere in the Gulf. And
Mm-hmm.
a guy who molested multiple children in a family, and I think he was either the boyfriend or brother of the boyfriend or something. But just this harrowing image of having these three small girls on a bed, and they would sort of hold hands to each other to sort of comfort themselves as he would just go down the line.
Yeah.
So hard content and
Yeah.
stories that I wish I could get out of my head, but they sort of bounce around in there.
That's important to say, though, because I think oftentimes when we're having this conversation and we're talking about producing or, crewing a true crime show, you take this stuff home. I mean, it's really hard to kind of leave your work behind and go along your day. I think that was one of the most rewarding parts of being part of that team was that we would do these really hard days, and then at the end of the day we would all get together and go to dinner and laugh and have fun and really try to wash ourselves of everything that we had to hold. So with that being said, as a father yourself, I can imagine that those types of stories would stay with you. How have you been able to like decompress from that, especially when you return home?
Great question. And you're absolutely right. Those gatherings we would have at the end of the day were critical and necessary to blow off
Yeah,
steam.
yeah.
Um, I I sort of laugh that nobody in my house really cares much about what I do in my day job. So I get to come home and nobody really, wants to know what I don't have to retell. I mean, they ask some questions once
Yeah.
in a while, and mostly it's they get to know some of the crew guys that I
Hmm.
I've been fortunate enough to want to keep working with me, and I get to bring on different shows. But they'll ask how were
Yeah.
the other guys that they might remember. And when we filmed in Colorado, I've been able, where I live now, they've been able to come by the house, and people have,
Um,
been able to meet. But um, I don't dwell on the work, so I
yeah.
get to come home and completely separate from it.
Hmm.
Um, in Pursuit was one of the few shows that would have me do a prep day. So I would be on a Zoom call with the producers and the executives to kind of talk about the case before we would get in, but
Yeah.
often get the stories the day of for a lot of other shows. You guys as the producing team live with it a lot longer. You do
Yeah.
pre-interviews and you do the research, and
Hmm.
it's just they embed a lot more. So I don't know how you guys kind of, to turn that question back, how
Yeah.
when I'm on the road, maybe doing 13 of these in a season, and each producing team does three or four of them, you anchor into those stories a lot more. Where
Yeah.
we just show up at the next episode and kind of get the details and try to keep the style the same
Yeah.
visually, and treat people honorably. But I think, have in the back of my mind, as far as being a dad, are my kids safe? Am
Yeah.
I not trusting enough? There was a moment where my wife's cousin visited us with her two daughters one summer, and my kids are teenagers and they wonder, it's about getting first jobs and how do you have
Yeah.
money? If you have money, what do you spend your money on? You go clothes shopping, or do you? So my oldest had a job at a sandwich shop, and he asked these girls, what do you guys do? Do you have a job? Are you working? And one of them said, I'm just getting requests on Instagram for pictures. And I tell
Oh
people they can
man.
pay me for a picture on Instagram. And I heard that and I was like, no way.
Oh
I'm telling your mom that this is
goodness.
exactly how you're going to get trafficked. Like, this is what's
Yeah.
going to lead
Yeah.
to you sort of winding up in Vegas on the side of the highway or something.
Yeah.
So the shows have sort of given me that as a reaction, where
Hmm.
I used to think, oh, that's fine. People do what they want on Instagram. But now I'm just like much more aware of the vulnerability of children, and
Yeah.
um, I'm careful more with
Yeah.
my kids, not on a Callahan Walsh level. That
Yeah.
guy's got a family history that
Yeah.
dictates a lot of choices he makes. He talked with me about just the conversation of picking a preschool for his kids, and that
Yeah.
they went with the one that ultimately had the best security system. It's just
Right.
like that. I don't necessarily go that far, and
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I talk to my kids and I make sure that whether it's online or whether it's in person, if they have a coach with whatever event sport team they're doing or something. Is everything on the up and up? And it's a shame that you have to think that way, but we
Yeah.
see it all the time that people that want to hurt kids get into positions of trust with
Yeah.
children. And
Yeah. And there was that one episode that we did, and it was about sex crimes with teenagers and adolescent kids. And that was, I think, my one episode that really, really stuck with me because we interviewed the teenager and, just hearing that firsthand along with dad. I mean, it's something else to be in the room and to actually do that and watch them share those stories. So
yep.
yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. But because of that, though, you've also DP'd quite a bit of different genres, including the paranormal, which was
Yeah.
something that was so cool that I learned about you over that time. How does shooting a paranormal show differ then from something like true crime?
So there is some overlap. You would be surprised.
Yes. Yeah.
Often the villain is not as obvious, but you get to play in the dark. So
Yeah.
it's tons of really creative lighting and camera stuff to happen. And there definitely early on, the first couple seasons of stuff, there was some trauma for the crew as well. Like when we
Yeah.
were in these situations where we thought there was demonic activity,
Mhm.
um, we definitely had to rely on each other. At the end of the day, people would
Wow.
freak out. People would think things would come home with them or follow them or get attached to them. And it was, yeah, it was disturbing. People would lose sleep for sure on those shows. And
Yeah.
we did several exorcisms. We saw people that were under oppression through a spirit. And
Mm.
that stuff is crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just sort of some of it you think has got to be psychological, and some of it it's hard to kind of rationalize because you're often against stuff you never see.
Yeah.
The people are calling you in because they feel the presence of something, and a TV crew rolls into town for a couple of days, and any
Mhm.
self-respecting ghost usually doesn't just show up on command. So occasionally you get maybe some audio,
Yeah.
but that's not always in the moment. You have to kind of find that out later if you listen to a
Yeah.
recording, or depending on the technology the team's using, maybe there's a shadow in some IR camera, but
Mhm.
it's rare that you get evidence. So it's a lot of talking about what's in somebody's mind, like what's
Yeah.
the stuff that's motivating you,
Yeah.
and where are you sensing this and what's been happening to create that. And yeah, I mean, there
Wow.
was people getting scratched, right? I mean, that there's something in the area that can go by them and leave marks on their skin, and that's worrying for
Yeah.
sure. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I thought that there was some overlap in the sense that we were working with intense emotions. We were
Yes.
working with people in distress, and certainly working in the dark. And
Yeah.
that for me was fun.
Wow. So
But yeah,
insightful.
I know. And it's like what you talked about being in the room. A lot of because we wanted to get as clean of an investigation as we could. A lot of the crew would be outside of the house.
Mhm.
Maybe it'd be the camera department and the sound department only. The producers would be watching on a monitor. It would feel like you would try to create the energy to attract the energy that was in the space, right? It's
Yeah.
the theory that it is all energy, energetic.
Yeah.
And so being in the room when someone pouring their heart out over a trauma of their past, or being in the room when someone's trying to get a sign of a spirit,
Mhm.
is very different than sitting in the car. Because I started directing those episodes after a season and a half or two, and holding the camera and being in the space versus watching it on a small monitor. And
Yeah.
you it is different. So when you
Wow.
talk about how it changed being there with them, it is there's a connection that's visceral, that
Yeah.
that you feel it in a way that. you don't always when you're just reading it on a page or watching
Hmm.
it on a monitor.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what is the most rewarding aspect of your job, but equally the biggest challenges you face?
Yeah, for me, I think I love getting to meet people from all walks of life
Yeah.
and often meeting them at a point where they're doing something that's at a juncture for them. So that has always been interesting. It could be interviewing people that are experts in their field. It doesn't have to be someone who's decided to tell their story for the first time. Um, it's connecting with folks that I wouldn't often on my own probably get to meet and to get access to them to hear their expertise and their what's special about them. And
Yeah.
then the biggest challenge I think is always the time and money. It just
Hmm.
you're constantly up against a tight schedule.
Hmm.
It's a creative industry, but it's pretty subjective. So a lot of it gets figured out in the moment. Like, do you think we should do this or you think we should do that? So going through these creative discussions with a full schedule of having to move on to the next thing quickly, having to move on to the next thing quickly, and not have the resources to just have
Mm.
one extra crew person or two extra crew people that would really make this easier. Like, why does our only PA have to go get lunch at the
Yeah.
moment when we might need to set up the next scene and we could really use an extra set of hands? But
Yeah.
so those challenges, and on a series like In Pursuit, we often have the same crew week after
Hmm.
week, so you develop a shorthand and some efficiency. But a lot of jobs, you just show up and you're working with a bunch of people you haven't met, and you have to
Yeah.
create chemistry in all of that with those time pressures and those money pressures. So those
Yeah.
are to me are the biggest challenges.
And what advice would you give someone who's looking to break into DPing, but also maybe in the true crime field?
Well, I would say, and I definitely feel like maybe film school is not the path unless you want to be a
Yeah.
director or a writer. So I would say hands on, learn by doing,
Hmm.
whether if you have to start for free, like as an intern, like I did, just get out there. It doesn't have to be for long. You could just show up on a shoot for a weekend, volunteer on your friend's short film, do a music video, whatever it is, just to begin to understand the industry. I remember I first got hired. They said, "We're going to put you on craft service. You're hired as a production assistant. You'll do craft service." And I'm like, "I've never heard that before. What is craft service? I don't even know what that is." They're like, "Oh, you're the guy that gets the food for everybody and brings the snacks." I was like, "Okay, that makes sense. Why do we call it that? That doesn't make any sense at all." But it's so you just learn the language of the
Yeah.
biz. You learn um, also, you get to be an observer of everyone
Hmm.
else's jobs and you get to decide what jobs might be of interest to you. I've never understood people that like to go into production management, but there's a whole group of
Yeah.
people that love to be in the middle of all the decisions that are getting made
Hmm.
and figuring stuff out as kind of the nerve center. It's so you may find that that's of interest to you. For me, to people that want to get into DP work and true crime work, I would say watch a lot of it.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
endless amounts of it. And there are some formulas that different channels use for their series. I would say learn those and then learn how to break them. I don't necessarily follow formulas, but then begin to see that there's kind of two fundamental parts of a lot of these, and it's the interview
Yeah.
and it's B-roll slash recre. So figure out how to make a nice interview frame. You can do that easily around your apartment or your house with a friend and or yourself, and you put a couple interviews together, try different lighting techniques. I use a lot of available light in my
Mm.
technique. I think when one starts out, it's often you overlight, so get past that, learn to light more subtly. I felt, as we often work with amateurs, people who are not in front of the camera
Yeah.
regularly, aren't always comfortable talking to people, that the more we make it feel like it's a big deal, the
Yeah.
more they are inclined to get nervous. So I light very minimally. I try to make it
Mm.
as comfortable for them to be in a conversation and not feel like they're under some glaring light and it's really important every move and thing that they make. So I don't know. It's just find ways to create frames that are easy for people to be in and not so rigid. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just about doing it, and it's DP work for me took several years, like I said, to work through
Yeah.
different departments. So be prepared to be an assistant for a little while, learn how to manage
Yeah.
media, learn how to keep care of equipment, learn, how to protect your lenses and how to use a tripod. So many guys just get handed a camera and they're like, "Oh yeah, you never have to put this thing down." Um, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely over the decades of my career that trying to keep people in the assistant camera position has gotten harder and harder because everyone gets
Yeah.
handed a camera really quickly. They're like, "Oh, you're in the camera department, just go shoot something here."
Yeah.
And then somebody's like, "I'm a camera operator now." You're like, "Well, there's still you could benefit from staying as an assistant for a while longer so that you can learn
Yeah.
more instead of feeling like you have all the answers right now." So
Yeah.
patience, I would say. Mhm.
These are
Yeah.
great. Honestly,
Uh,
this is such great advice overall. So, one of my favorite series you have done is Generation Drag.
oh, yeah,
And
you did like that, right?
I loved it. And it was so unique. And I know it was an experience for you. What were some of your biggest takeaways working with children blossoming in the drag community?
Yeah, that I like to joke that show was the heaviest pronoun show I've ever worked on. So it was every day everyone had to declare their pronouns, not just like at the beginning on the call sheet, because
Yeah.
some of the kids would change their pronoun from day to day. They'd be a they, them, or they'd be a he, him, or a she, her the next day. And so
Yeah.
that was curious to me that it could be so fluid, that it was a takeaway that and I see this in my kids that they're a lot more
Yeah.
comfortable with gender fluidity than
Yeah.
my generation was. And I was surprised at how fluid that it was a day-to-day fluidity,
Mhm.
that it wasn't that you were claiming your identity. So that was one takeaway. Another was how incredibly supportive these parents have
Yeah.
become as they've struggled to go on these journeys, that as the kids are transitioning, the parents are also transitioning to these support
Mhm.
roles that they didn't imagine for themselves. Because some of the parents were, they're a firefighter and a nurse, they're blue
Yeah.
collar, and then
Right.
suddenly they biologically had a son and two daughters, and their son transitioned to a female, and one of their daughters transitioned to male, and their other daughter was pansexual. So I didn't,
Mhm.
their family just had to embrace it all. And every
Yeah.
one of their kids were in the moment figuring out their identity and at a young age. I mean, at that,
Mhm.
sometimes it felt like older generations would just be quiet about it. And it was something later in life that would become something they would take action on. But now folks are starting so young to
Yeah.
sense their gender, and apparently there's benefit in that as far as getting on hormones at an earlier age and
Yeah.
being able to stop, if you're masculine, having your testosterone come out early more.
Right.
um, and then the other takeaway is just how in a safe space, how just fantastically fun and silly that these guys could be. Um, that I think it's not easy. Some folks think it's a trend or it's like they're
Yeah.
doing it because they saw it on social media. But
Right.
these are really hard choices that these
Yeah.
people are making to present
Yeah.
themselves in the world. I think when they're not in the stress of like being in school and finding a core group of friends that are maybe the oddballs that accept them, that being around the film crew in a what felt like a safe space,
Mm.
they were delightful. I mean,
Mm.
just articulate and creative and just yeah,
Yeah.
passionate people. So it just sort of a takeaway of living life at your truth was
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So now it's time in the interview where we get to learn a little bit more about you as a person.
Oh,
So, what's the
who's
most
interested in that? Not me. No, I'm kidding.
I'm interested for
What's
sure. What's the most interesting thing you've read, watched, or listened to recently?
recently watched One Road to Quartzite. which is a
Mm,
documentary about snowbirds that settle on this exit in Quartzsite, Arizona.
no.
This town that is like 2,000 people year round, gets to be, some folks say, as much as 1 million in the winter. So it's just RVs and all the characters that show up there. The filmmaker, it has some slow moment in it, and it's uneven parts, but really great verite
Mm,
documentary.
yeah.
So that was inspiring. It's been a good year for me for some novels. One was called Burnham Woods, yeah, and Tom Lake. I like both those, and The Heaven and Earth Grocery were both really good books for me. All three were really good books for me this year. I know that might be it. And then my wife is just a fantastic cook, so we get to eat really well, and so
Yeah.
I've been enjoying her cooking as the fall harvest has been coming in. We have a small, we call it farmette, but we've got
Yeah.
bees
Uh,
and birds, some fowl, and huge garden. So we've been doing a lot with squash and tomatoes lately, which has
Fun. And
been
are
really
you
good.
still in the mushroom business?
Yeah, we
Talk to me about
are.
that.
So that's another way I decompress from work. Is we grow gourmet mushrooms,
Yeah.
and we sell. We also have a business, a separate business that is a powder extract business, a potent powder extract business that it's called West Wolf Medicinals, and we use kind of ancient traditional medicine that's
Mm,
been used for 2,000 years ahead of us in Asia and Eastern Europe. And the US is just catching on. So lion's mane and turkey tail and chaga and reishi and cordyceps
yeah.
um, are all in our blends. And so that's been exciting. And it's something that really helped my wife, Nicole, through her perimenopause phase when her body was
Mm,
just overheated and her brain fog. And so we had personal experience with how beneficial these could be. And we're like, her product was tied in with like a coffee substitute or coffee, and we
mm,
wanted something that people didn't have to create with coffee. So you get
yeah.
these bulk powders and you can put them in any drink you like and get all the good health benefits.
I love it.
And I
Well,
think it
I'll put
helps
a link
me.
to that too.
Oh, you're too kind, but I think it helps a lot on set. A lot
Yeah.
of friends on set take it for the immune boosting properties. We
Mm,
often are getting sick and traveling so much and being around all sorts of strangers.
yeah.
So often on set, folks are,
Using
they
that
hear
too.
me extol the benefits and get into it. So
That's
yeah,
great.
it makes a good set too. Mushroom powders.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No, it's good. It's good. It's good here. I'd say for sure. I enjoy being home.
oh, I bet. And you are in a beautiful area, which is what leads me into my next question. So you are in Boulder, Colorado, one of the most picturesque places I've ever been, and I love it so much. Is there a local restaurant, shop, bookshop, anyone you want to shout out?
Yeah, there's some great stuff. I mean, it's fantastic here, but my oldest son just started at the university, CU Boulder, this fall. So I
Mm.
have a college guy he's
Oh
living in the
my
dorms,
goodness.
but yeah, he's finding the campus to be a whole world within a world
Yeah.
around town. But yeah, we're members of the Shambhala community, so I would always shout out
Mm.
Shambhala. And
Yeah.
the Shambhala Center still downtown on 14th and Spruce, but the good for meditation, good for
Yeah.
getting your head right through all these ups and downs, and just kind of tapping into your own basic goodness and trying to make, I don't know, enlightened society possible. Hey.
Love
But
it.
then down the block from that is a long time bookstore cafe called the Trident Bookstore,
Mm.
and my wife worked there when she went to CU, put herself through school, and they now carry our mushroom products. So
Oh
definitely
my
shouting
goodness.
out. You can at the coffee shop, you can get a scoop of it in your coffee drink, and
Wow.
um, and then there's a new kind of fun, quirky. There's always quirky stuff happening, but there's a guy who started a mushroom cafe called Myco Cafe on
Mm.
28th and Arapahoe, and
Yeah.
Ramsey has got the Myco Cafe. So as people get more exposed to mushrooms, and I don't mean
Yeah.
to berate and carry on a theme, but yeah, I would say the Myco Cafe is worth a check out when you come to town too.
Amazing. I like that theme though. I love
Yeah,
it, love it, love it.
yeah.
All right, last question for you. Who are some of your heroes and how have they inspired you?
As a kid, my idol was Pele for some reason. I just adored everything about the style and the character
Mm,
of this incredible Brazilian soccer star,
yeah.
as a humanitarian as well. But then career wise, it was a lot of the early Hollywood guys,
Mm,
Conrad Hall, Vilmos Zsigmond, and just guys that were Laszlo Kovacs that were part of the new wave, really good verite stuff, and then
mm,
breaking into pretty cinematic Hollywood. And Roger Deakins is of course everybody's hero these days. But um, I find that I really had to study the work as I was learning and getting excited about it, and
yeah.
taking industry magazines like American Cinematographer and going to the movies a lot and watching movies and reading camera books. And those guys stood out to me as people that their work kind of blended in to,
Yeah.
it didn't just distract from the story. It was like you watched the story and were aware that it was really well done, but you weren't stuck saying, wow, I wonder how they did that shot, or that was really cool. You just sort of were along for the ride and let that's the goal, I think, of the DP is to serve the story of the director if you're in a scripted, and the producer if it's TV. But um, you don't want it to be about you. At least I don't take the approach that it works about me. So,
Yeah.
so, um, so those guys who made it feel like their work was excellent and also organic
Yeah.
was what really appealed to me about them.
Love those answers. Well,
Hmm.
Benj, thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, I mean, the team at In Pursuit and just getting to know you over that summer, it really was something magical. And I take everything that we experienced with me on all of these other series that I've done. So thank you so
That's
much
great.
for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, something that came out of that for me, and maybe you sensed it, but it maybe wasn't so talked about too, was that I always approach those days like, what am I wanting from the people that are coming to talk to us? And
Yeah.
if I want them to be open, then I need to be open.
Yeah.
Or if I want them to be authentic, I need to be authentic. So I would come to set and the guys that were in my department, which was most of the crew that would travel with us, would come in with that approach. It would be like, all
Mhm.
right, guys, I know we can all be silly after work, but this is the time that the jokes are gonna die down for a little bit. We're gonna be really respectful, and we're gonna be open-hearted. And if we are expecting these people to come in and trust us and be open-hearted, then we need to give that to them. So I think that for me was a real fundamental part of those days on set, and maybe that resonated when you were got to join the team.
I mean, I'm tearing up just hearing that, but yeah, I would say so. Like I said, it was a master class in ethics and true crime, and being able to work with you along with just such a phenomenal little team and really doing what we could do to bring awareness and bring some justice to these families. And that's not lost on me. And again, I'm just so glad our paths crossed. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
doing
same, and
this.
thanks for doing this. I think that idea of a code of ethics for a
Yeah.
lot of this work, right? I mean, Hollywood's brought it into intimacy coordinators, right? They've
Yes,
sort of like,
exactly.
so why can't we say, yeah, this is appropriate? And I know exactly what you're talking about as far as
Mhm.
a cumulative sense of trauma, and
Yeah,
also seeing it be triggering for crew people who
yeah.
weren't always prepared for what we're getting into. And most of our crew was familiar with the content, but we would hire a couple local people. The
Yes.
sound guy would be often a day hired. Sometimes the makeup would. We traveled with makeup for a while, but when we didn't, and
Yeah.
um, and the local
PAs.
production assistants,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Mhm.
they kind of get walked into, and it's not a typical day at the office at all. I mean, this stuff
Exactly.
is heavy. So you have to see crew get so triggered. Just shows you what everybody's walking around with stuff, and
Yeah.
why can't we allow some mental health support or
Mhm.
some ways for this stuff to be not just something we have to put up with.
Yeah. Exactly. You're
Yeah.
singing the tune to my song.
Hey!
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Ben. Be sure to tune in next week for the second part of my personal tale. With October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I've spent the past few weeks raising awareness about Lauren's Lap and the Lauren McCluskey Foundation here in Utah. For the first time ever, I'll be sharing how my journey connects with the life of Lauren McCluskey, a vibrant spirit taken too soon. The Foundation's mission is to create safer campuses across America, and I invite you to listen as her memory is honored and awareness is raised. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Thank you for listening, and as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.